Jin-Ho Park stood at the large viewing window of Station Proxima, watching the stars. His hands were sweaty as he gripped his basic student tablet. The space station was huge, much bigger than any space station humans had built. It spun slowly to create artificial gravity that felt a bit too light for him, making his movements slightly bouncy. He was the first human to ever attend the Galactic Academy of Sciences. At 18 years old, he carried the hopes of Earth on his shoulders. The hallway he stood in was filled with strange sounds and smells. Students from 50 different alien species walked, slithered, or floated past him. Some had too many legs, others had none at all. "Excuse me," said a soft voice behind him. "Are you the human student?" Jin-Ho turned around and saw two students who looked almost human. One was a girl with dark hair tied back neatly, and the other was a tall boy. Both wore the blue uniforms of the academy. "Yes, I'm Jin-Ho Park, from Earth," he said with a small bow. The girl smiled. "I'm Eunji Kim from New Seoul Colony, and this is Hae Newell Lee. We're third-generation space colonists. Our families left Earth a long time ago." Jin-Ho felt relieved to meet someone who understood Earth culture. Before he could say more, a group of alien students stopped nearby, pointing and whispering. "Is that really the primitive?" asked one tall, silver-skinned student, the one from the Death World. "Yes, that's what I heard," said another with 4 arms. "They only just learned how to leave their planet. They still use chemical rockets." Jin-Ho's face got hot, but he kept his calm. He had been warned about this. Humans were new to space travel, and many species looked down on them. "Don't mind them," Hae Newell said quietly. "Come on, we'll show you to the dormitory. You're in our living section." As they walked through the station's curved hallways, Jin-Ho saw amazing technology everywhere. Doors opened by themselves, lights changed to match each species' vision, and small robot helpers zoomed around carrying things. "The Academy takes students from all Class 3 planets and above," Eunji explained. "Earth is the only Class 13 planet that has ever sent a student here." "What does Class 13 mean?" Jin-Ho asked, though he already knew the answer. "It means Death World," Hae Newell said. "Planets with extreme gravity, dangerous weather, lots of natural disasters, and aggressive life forms. Most species think it's impossible to develop civilization on such planets." They reached a large round door that opened into a comfortable room. One wall was a giant screen showing a view of space. There was a bed that adjusted itself as Jin-Ho sat down, becoming firmer to match Earth gravity. "Your first class is tomorrow. Basic Xenobiology with Professor Yang," Eunji said. "We're in the same class. Most students find it easy, but..." She paused. "But what?" "But they've never had a Death Worlder in class before," Hae Newell finished. "It might be interesting." Jin-Ho nodded slowly. He looked out at the stars again, thinking about Earth far below. These aliens thought his home was primitive and dangerous. They called it a death world like it was a simple fact. They had no idea what that really meant. Tomorrow, in class, they would start to learn. And maybe, just maybe, they would begin to understand why humans were not just survivors of a death world. They were its masters. "Thank you for your help," Jin-Ho said to his new friends. "I think tomorrow will be very interesting indeed." The xenobiology classroom was large and circular. Students sat at desks that adjusted to their different body shapes and sizes. Jin-Ho watched as a student with 6 legs settled into a special chair, while another who looked like floating crystals hovered above their desk. Professor Yang stood at the center of the room. He was tall and thin, wearing the traditional black robes of an academy teacher. His hair was perfectly neat, and his voice was clear as he began the class. "Today, we will discuss planetary classifications and their effects on species development," Professor Yang said. "We will start with Class 1 planets, known as Paradise Worlds." Images appeared in the air above his head, showing beautiful planets with perfect weather and gentle seasons. Jin-Ho noticed many students sitting straighter, proud of their homeworlds. Paradise Worlds produce species that focus on art, philosophy, and advanced technology. Professor Yang continued. They have little need to worry about survival. A student raised one of their 4 hands. Professor, is that why Paradise World species are considered the most advanced? Correct, Professor Yang nodded. Now let us move to the other end of the scale. The image changed to show Earth. Jin Ho felt Yun-ji and He Newell glance at him. Class 13 planets, or death worlds, are considered mostly uninhabitable. Professor Yang said, Earth is an unremarkable example. High gravity, extreme temperatures, constant natural disasters, and aggressive life forms make these planets unsuitable for civilized development. Several students turned to stare at Jin Ho. He kept his face calm, but his hands tightened under his desk. Excuse me, Professor, Jin Ho said politely. May I ask a question? Professor Yang looked surprised. Of course. You said Earth is unremarkable. Jin Ho began. But did you know that humans can survive in temperatures from -40 to +40 degrees? Or that we can heal from broken bones in just weeks? The classroom went quiet. Professor Yang adjusted his glasses. Those are interesting facts, but they only prove my point. Such adaptations are necessary for survival on a death world, but they leave little room for advanced development. I see, Jin Ho said. And what would you consider advanced development? The ability to control weather, eliminate disease, and prevent natural disasters. A voice called out. It was Du Yan Choi, a student from a paradise world. Things that actually matter, not just surviving. Jin Ho smiled slightly. Interesting. And how long can your species survive without climate control? Du Yan frowned. Why would we need to? We have mastered our environment. Students, Professor Yang interrupted. Let us return to the lesson. We will discuss the characteristics of Class 2 planets next. As the class continued, Yun-ji leaned close to Jin Ho. You handled that well, she whispered. They don't understand, Jin Ho whispered back. They think Earth made us primitive. They don't realize it made us strong. After class, He Newell caught up with them in the hallway. The way they talk about Earth bothers you, doesn't it? Jin Ho stopped walking and turned to his friends. It's not that. They use the word death world like it's an insult, but they've never had to outrun a storm, or survive in the wilderness, or heal from a real injury. They don't understand what it means to evolve on a planet that's trying to kill you every day. So help them understand, Yun-ji suggested. Jin Ho thought for a moment, then smiled. Maybe I will, but first, they need to ask the right questions. As they walked to their next class, Jin Ho began to form a plan. These students thought they knew everything about planetary classification. Soon, they would learn what it truly meant to be from a death world. And maybe then, they would start asking those right questions. The Academy's main gathering hall was bright and spacious. Students from different species met here after classes to socialize. Some played games using floating light boards, while others shared meals from their homeworlds. Jin Ho sat with Yun-ji and He Newell at one of the round tables. He was eating his simple Earth lunch, rice, vegetables, and meat, while watching the other students. Most of them ate strange foods that seemed to float or glow. Look who decided to join us, He Newell said quietly, nodding toward the entrance. Du Yan Choi walked in with a group of students from Paradise Worlds. They all moved with perfect grace, their uniforms spotless and gleaming. Du Yan saw Jin Ho and smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. Eating real animal flesh again, Deathworlder? Du Yan asked, stopping at their table. How primitive. We learned to make perfect food in laboratories thousands of years ago. Jin Ho carefully wiped his mouth with a napkin. Yes, we still eat real food on Earth. Our bodies need high energy intake to maintain our strength. Strength. One of Du Yan's friends laughed. What use is physical strength in a civilized galaxy? We have machines for labor. And what happens when the machines break down? Jin-Ho asked calmly. The Paradise World students looked confused. Machines don't break down, Du Yin said. Not if you're advanced enough to maintain them properly. Jin-Ho stood up slowly. He wasn't very tall, but something about the way he moved made several students step back. Everything breaks down eventually. Everything fails. Everything dies. That's what you don't understand about Earth. The gathering hall had gone quiet. Other students were watching now, interested in the confrontation. You think we don't understand? Du Yan's voice was angry now. We understand perfectly. Your planet is so dangerous that you never had time to develop properly. You're still stuck in primitive survival mode while we explore the stars. Jin-Ho smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. You say Earth never let us develop properly. But tell me, Du Yan, have you ever survived a natural disaster? Have you ever had to find food without machines? Have you ever felt real pain? Of course not, Du Yan said proudly. We solved those problems long ago. No, Jin-Ho said softly. You didn't solve them. You avoided them. And that's why you don't understand what Earth really is or what it means to be human. Du Yan's face turned slightly purple, apparently their species' way of showing anger. Then explain it to us, DEATHWORLDer. Explain why your primitive planet deserves any respect in our advanced galaxy. Jin-Ho looked around the gathering hall. Every student was watching now, even the floating crystal beings who usually ignored everyone. Very well, Jin-Ho said. Tomorrow, in xenobiology class, I will explain exactly why Earth is called a death world. And then you'll understand why that name should terrify you. The hall erupted in whispers. Du Yan tried to hide their surprise, but Jin-Ho saw it. Is that a threat? Du Yan asked. No, Jin-Ho said. It's a biology lesson. I suggest you all attend. You might learn something about what real advancement means. He sat back down and continued eating his lunch. After a moment, Du Yan and their friends walked away, talking in low voices. Are you sure about this? Yunji asked when the others were gone. Jin-Ho nodded. They need to understand. Earth isn't just a planet that tries to kill you. It's a planet that makes you strong enough to survive anything. Tomorrow, they'll learn what that really means. The xenobiology classroom was completely full. Word had spread about Jin-Ho's challenge, and students from other classes had come to watch. Even some teachers stood at the back of the room. Professor Yang looked nervous as he adjusted his glasses. Today, student Jin-Ho Park will give a special presentation about Earth, Professor Yang announced. Please remember to maintain proper academic behavior. Jin-Ho walked to the center of the room. He had spent all night preparing for this moment. He looked at the faces around him, some curious, some doubtful, some hostile. Du Yan sat in the front row, wearing a perfect uniform and a small smile. Yesterday, we talked about Earth being a Class 13 death world. Jin-Ho began. Today, I will explain what that really means. He pressed a button on his tablet. Above his head, an image of Earth appeared, beautiful and blue. Earth's gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared, he said. That means most of you would barely be able to walk on my planet. The atmospheric pressure would feel like being deep underwater. The temperature changes would kill most of you within hours. He showed pictures of Earth's different places: deserts, frozen mountains, deep oceans, thick jungles. The students watched in silence. But these are just numbers, Jin-Ho continued. What matters is what these conditions did to life on Earth. Every living thing on my planet evolved to survive in these conditions. Every plant, every animal, every tiny bacteria had to become incredibly tough just to exist. He showed new images, Earth creatures that looked beautiful but deadly. A blue-ringed octopus, a box jellyfish, a golden poison frog. That small frog contains enough poison to kill 1,000 of you, Jin-Ho said calmly. We have insects that can survive nuclear radiation. We have bacteria that eat metal. We have plants that can trap and digest animals. The room was very quiet now. Some students were moving away from the images, even though they were just holograms. But the most important thing to understand is this, Jin-Ho said, his voice getting stronger. Humans didn't just survive among these creatures. We became the most dangerous species on our planet. We learned to eat the poisonous plants. We learned to catch the deadly animals. We learned to swim in the deep oceans and climb the highest mountains. He showed a new image, a human hunting party from ancient times, taking down a huge mammoth. We don't have natural weapons like claws or fangs. We don't have armor like scales or shells. Instead, we evolved something much more dangerous, the ability to adapt to anything, to survive anything, to overcome anything. Du Yun raised their hand. Their perfect smile was gone. But that was in the past. Surely now that humans have technology. Now we're even more dangerous, Jin-Ho interrupted quietly, because we kept all our survival abilities and added technology to them. We still have the bodies that evolved on a death world, but now we have machines too. We still have the minds that learn to outsmart predators, but now we have computers too. He looked around the room again. No one was smiling now. Some students were taking notes with shaking hands. You called Earth primitive, Jin-Ho finished. But here's what you don't understand. Earth didn't make us primitive. Earth made us into the perfect survival machines. And tomorrow, I'll prove it to you. Jin-Ho began the second part of his presentation the next day. The classroom was even more crowded than before. Professor Yang had to request a larger teaching space to accommodate all the students who wanted to attend. Yesterday, I told you about Earth's conditions, Jin-Ho said, standing tall in the center of the room. Today, I will explain how these conditions shaped humans into what we are. He displayed a new image, a human skeleton next to the skeletons of Earth's other creatures. Our bones are incredibly dense because of Earth's gravity. They can repair themselves after breaking. Many of you have bones that would shatter under Earth's gravity. The students shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Du Yun was taking careful notes, their earlier arrogance completely gone. Our muscles are designed for endurance, Jin-Ho continued. Humans can run for hours without stopping. We hunt by chasing our prey until it becomes too tired to run anymore. We call this persistence hunting. He showed a video of traditional hunters tracking an animal across a hot plain. Many students looked disturbed by the footage. Our bodies can survive extreme temperatures, Jin-Ho explained. We can live in places where water freezes solid and in places where rocks melt from heat. We produce sweat to cool ourselves, a system so efficient that we can run in hot weather that would kill most creatures. Eunji raised her hand. But what about modern humans? Surely we've lost these abilities. Jin-Ho shook his head. No, these traits are part of our basic design. Every human child is born with these capabilities. We still have the same bodies that evolved on Earth, even if we don't always need to use these abilities. He displayed new information about human biology. We can eat almost anything. Our stomachs produce acid strong enough to dissolve metal. We have bacteria living inside us that help us digest things that would poison most species. We can survive on nearly any type of food. The room was completely silent now. Even Professor Yang was taking notes. But perhaps the most important thing to understand is our ability to heal, Jin-Ho said. Humans can survive injuries that would kill most species. We can lose large amounts of blood and survive. We can regrow damaged tissue. We can even survive having parts of our vital organs removed. He paused, looking around the room. And our brains evolved to match our bodies. We can learn to survive in any environment. We can figure out how to use any tool. We can adapt to any situation. This is why we advanced so quickly once we developed technology. Du Yun spoke up, their voice quieter than usual. You mean your technological advancement wasn't slowed by Earth's conditions? No, Jin-Ho replied. Earth's conditions made us advance faster. Because every day we had to solve problems just to stay alive. Every day we had to think of new ways to survive. Every day we had to become better, stronger, smarter. He showed one final image. A modern human city next to untamed wilderness. We didn't escape Earth's challenges. We mastered them. We didn't avoid our planet's dangers. We learned to overcome them. That's what makes us different from species from paradise worlds. The silence in the room was absolute. Jin-Ho could see the understanding finally beginning to dawn in their eyes. They were starting to realize what it truly meant to evolve on a death world. Tomorrow, he said quietly, I will show you what a human can really do. And then you'll understand why you should be glad we come in peace. The Academy's environmental simulation chamber was a large round room with white walls. It could recreate the conditions of any known planet. Screens along the walls showed readings of temperature, gravity, and air pressure. A group of safety officers stood ready with medical equipment. Jin-Ho stood in the center of the chamber, wearing simple exercise clothes. Behind a thick glass wall, hundreds of students and teachers watched. Professor Yang supervised the demonstration with several other professors. The first test will simulate normal Earth gravity and conditions, Professor Yang announced. Then we will adjust various factors to demonstrate human capabilities. Kei Tae-yoon, a student from a high-gravity world, stepped forward. He was known as one of the strongest students at the Academy. I volunteered to compare my abilities with the human, he said. Jin-Ho nodded politely. Thank you for volunteering. The chamber activated. The gravity increased to Earth normal. Kita seemed comfortable. His world had similar gravity. Jin-Ho began to run on the track that appeared on the floor. Kita ran beside him. After 10 minutes, Kita was breathing hard. After 20 minutes, he had to stop. Jin-Ho kept running, his breathing steady and controlled. Humans can maintain this pace for hours, Jin-Ho explained, not even sounding tired. We evolved to chase prey until they collapsed from exhaustion. Next, they tested strength. Kita lifted more weight at first, but Jin-Ho demonstrated how humans could keep lifting long after other species would tire. Our muscles resist fatigue differently, Jin-Ho explained. We sacrifice pure strength for endurance. The chamber then simulated extreme temperatures. First, intense heat. Jin-Ho began to sweat but continued exercising. The alien students watched in amazement as his cooling system worked exactly as he had described. Most species would be suffering heat stroke by now, Professor Yang noted, checking the readings. But his body temperature remained stable. They switched to extreme cold. Jin-Ho's skin prickled with goosebumps, but he continued to move normally. Humans can survive in temperatures that would freeze most species solid, he explained. Du Yun spoke through the communication system. But surely you cannot handle sudden changes. Jin-Ho nodded to the control room. The chamber rapidly switched between hot and cold. He remained standing, his body adapting to each change. On Earth, temperature can change very quickly, he said. We had to evolve to handle this. The final test involved injury response. Jin-Ho held up his hand, showing a small cut he had received earlier that day. The wound was already healing. Our healing rate is much faster than most species, he explained. We can recover from injuries that would be fatal to others. The demonstration ended. The students were very quiet as Jin-Ho walked out of the chamber. Even Kita looked at him with new respect. Now you begin to understand, Jin-Ho said to the silent crowd. Everything that makes Earth dangerous made us stronger. Everything that tried to kill us made us harder to kill. This is what it means to be from a death world. Professor Yang stepped forward, his voice serious. I believe we must reconsider our classification of Earth and humans. Perhaps we have been measuring advancement by the wrong standards. As the crowd began to discuss this idea, an alarm suddenly blared through the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Something was very wrong. The station's emergency sirens continued to wail. Red warning lights flashed in every corridor. A computerized voice spoke clearly through the speakers. Warning. Life support failure detected in Section 7. All residents of Section 7 must evacuate immediately. Jin-ho noticed the change in the other students immediately. Many froze in place. Others began to panic, moving in confused circles or calling out in their native languages. Even the teachers looked uncertain. Section 7 is a residential area, Yunji said quickly. There are hundreds of students living there. Jin-ho's mind worked fast. On Earth, he had trained for emergencies since he was small. Every human child learned what to do in a crisis. How many exits does Section 7 have? He asked. 2 main exits and 1 emergency exit, Hae-nul answered. But the emergency exit is hard to find if you don't know where it is. Jin-ho stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise. Professor Yang, I need permission to help with the evacuation. Professor Yang looked surprised but nodded quickly. Granted. What do you need? Yunji. Hae-nul, help me organize these students into groups, Jin-ho said. Each group should have someone who knows where the emergency exit is. Do-yeon, you know the station's layout well, correct? Do-yeon straightened up. Yes, I do. Good. I need you to lead one of the groups. Choose the students who might have trouble moving quickly and guide them out through the main exit. To everyone's surprise, Do-yeon immediately began organizing students without question. The clear instructions seemed to calm the panic. Jin-ho moved quickly through the station's corridors toward Section 7. He could feel the air getting thinner. The life support system was failing faster than expected. Many students stumbled out of their rooms, looking confused and frightened. Stay calm and follow the guides, Jin-ho called out, his voice strong and steady. We have plenty of time if we move in order. He helped organize the evacuation, making sure no one was left behind. When he found a group of younger students hiding in their room, too scared to move, he spoke to them gently but firmly. I know you're scared, he said, but humans deal with dangerous situations all the time. Trust me, I won't let anything happen to you. Something in his voice, in his absolute certainty, made them trust him. They followed him out. The evacuation continued smoothly. Jin-ho worked with Do-yeon and the others, checking rooms and helping those who needed it. He noticed that the Paradise World students, who had never faced real danger before, now looked at him with new understanding. When the last student was safely out of Section 7, Jin-ho helped the station's engineers seal off the affected area. The life support failure was contained and repairs could begin. In the gathering hall, where the evacuated students rested, Professor Yang approached Jin-ho. That was remarkable, he said. You knew exactly what to do in a crisis. Jin-ho nodded. On Earth, we face dangerous situations regularly. Earthquakes, storms, floods. We learn to handle emergencies from childhood. It becomes natural. I think I understand now, Do-yeon said quietly, joining them. Your planet's dangers didn't just make you physically strong. They made you mentally strong too. You don't panic. You solve problems. You help others survive. Yes, Jin-ho said. That's what it really means to be from a death world. We don't just survive. We make sure everyone survives with us. The gathered students were silent, but it was a different kind of silence than before. It wasn't fear or disbelief anymore. It was respect. 1 month had passed since the life support emergency. The Galactic Academy of Sciences had changed in subtle but important ways. Jin-ho noticed these changes as he walked through the station's corridors to his morning classes. Students no longer moved away when he passed. Instead, many stopped to greet him or ask questions about Earth. The word Death World was still used, but now it was spoken with respect rather than dismissal. In the xenobiology classroom, Professor Yang had made significant changes to the curriculum. Today, he was teaching about adaptation and survival rather than just technological advancement. The recent events have taught us an important lesson, Professor Yang said to the class. True advancement comes in many forms. The ability to survive and adapt is just as valuable as the ability to build advanced technology. Jin-ho sat with Yeon-ji and Hae-nul, taking notes. Do-yeon, who now chose to sit near them, raised a hand. Professor, Do-yeon asked, could you explain how we might learn from Earth's development pattern? My home world has relied on technology to solve all problems. Perhaps this has made us vulnerable. Professor Yang nodded approvingly. An excellent question. Jin-ho, would you like to address this? Jin-ho stood up, remembering how different things had been just a month ago. The key is not to abandon technology, he explained. Instead, understand that technology should make you stronger, not dependent. On Earth, we use technology to enhance our natural abilities, not replace them. After class, a group of students gathered around Jin-ho. They had started a study group to learn about Earth's survival techniques. Even Kita, the strong student from the high-gravity world, had joined. We've been thinking, Kita said. Each of our species has different strengths. Humans have shown us that being advanced doesn't mean being soft. Perhaps we can learn from each other. Jin-ho smiled. That's exactly what the Galactic Academy is for. We all have something to teach and something to learn. Later that evening, Jin-ho met with the Academy's Council of Teachers. They had called him for a special announcement. We have reviewed our planetary classification system, the head teacher said. While Earth remains a Class 13 planet due to its physical conditions, we no longer consider this a mark of primitiveness. Instead, we are creating a new category for species that have mastered their challenging environments. Jin-ho thought about all that had happened. The fear had turned to respect. The mockery had turned to genuine interest. The students from Paradise Worlds were learning to be stronger, while still keeping their technological advancement. As he looked out the station window at the stars, Do-yeon joined him. You know, they said, when you first arrived, we thought we had nothing to learn from Earth. We were wrong. And I learned something too, Jin-ho replied. Having an easier life doesn't make someone weak. It just means they haven't been tested yet. What matters is how you respond when challenges come. Do-yeon nodded. The station's emergency proved that. You didn't just show us how to survive. You showed us how to help others survive too. Jin-ho watched a ship arrive at the station, carrying new students from different worlds. That's the real lesson of Earth, he said. A death world doesn't just teach you to live. It teaches you to protect life. Maybe that's the most advanced thing of all.